This is a sort of...
It's kind of an impromptu, frequently asked questions session. We got a lot of questions this year, and we just wanted to highlight some of the top questions that we frequently saw.
I'm going to be playing the part of the audience asking questions.
And I'll answer the questions.
Because he knows everything.
Almost.
So we're starting with one of our most frequently asked questions. Can I mount this 6-power long scope on my rifle?
And long story short is if you have an octagon barrel and you're willing to drill and tap, the answer is yes. Now, if you don't want to drill and tap, that's when it gets a little bit tricky. Modern production Pedersoli Sharps rifles, they do have some holes drilled and tapped for the rear tank sight, so you can use those same holes for the heavy-duty base. But as I understand, Chiappa and Uberti don't drill holes at the factory. So for those rifles, you will have to drill and tap.
I'm going to grab our rifle while you're telling them.
Okay. So also for the Malcolm, if you're looking to mount one of our Malcolm short scopes, the answer also stays the same. If you're mounting on an octagon barrel and you're willing to drill and tap, then you can definitely mount this with the provided mounts. We do have a couple of mounting kits that would work for, that are no drilling and tapping required, such as for the Henry Golden Boy 22, the Marlin 94, 95 lever actions, the Henry Big Boy, also the Winchester 1885 reproduction made by Moroku. Our Winchester 92, 94 lever action. You can use the existing holes on the side of the receiver. Yeah, and this is a Uberti 1885 high wall. So in order to mount the long scope on this, we actually drilled and tapped 2 holes in the rear for the heavy duty base. The front ring actually just goes into the standard 3/8 inch dovetail cut. We also do have some special sized dovetail sets for C-sharps, for Shiloh sharps. I believe the size is .465 or somewhere in that ballpark. But yeah, so basically, as long as if you're willing to modify the rifle, you can definitely mount one of the Malcolm scopes. We definitely recommend that you go to a reputable gunsmith to do any work on the gun for you. Okay, let's see, what else? 1903s. So 1903 A1, if you want to mount the 8-power scope, you will need to cut the stock. So once again, we recommend you go to a reputable gunsmith who has worked on 1903s before. We don't want you to damage or do any unnecessary damage to your gun if you don't have to. I'm just adding to the blooper reel.
Yes, we are. Oh no, I'm going to be in the blooper reel next time. So this is the 8-power scope that he was talking about. This is, I guess it is a bit historical. This is pretty similar to the original design. Mm-hmm. We just looked at a classic Redfield version ourselves. This external adjustment is a little backwards from how a normal scope works, isn't it? Yeah,
that's very true. So that's another good question. We do get a lot of questions on what's the difference between internal and external adjustment. And the Unertl scope, or our Malcolm 8-power reproduction of it, is a classic example of external adjustment. So what is external adjustment? It's quite simple. You see these turrets on the rear mount? Well, the turrets, external adjustments, when you make the adjustment into the rear mount, it actually physically moves the scope tube around. Whereas internal adjustment, let me grab an example.
We got spares stacked in between.
So for example, this is our modern Pentalux TAC-V 4 to 22nd focal plane scope. And if you notice, the turrets are actually on the scope tube itself. They come out, and when you dial it, it doesn't look like anything's happening. But what actually is going on is, if you can imagine, inside this aluminum tube, there's something called the erector unit. The erector unit is a set of lenses, a cylindrical unit that's within the scope tube. What happens when you're actually dialing this turret is you're actually changing the pitch of the erector unit inside, and that's what causes you to shift your point of impact. Whereas on the external adjustment, it's the actual scope body that's being moved.
Unfortunately, it does take quite a little while to get the eyepiece off, but eventually I'll be able to take this rear mount out and show you guys the fact that it is separate from the tube.
We've also been getting a lot of questions from you guys. I know we teased that we were launching an improved mount for the 8-power scope. And trust us, it's on the way. We have a couple of production samples that we're putting through the final paces. And long story short, sometime first quarter next year. Why is it taking us so long? Well, we had a couple of design changes that we made. We wanted to keep, like the original, we wanted to make it 25 clicks per revolution. We actually turned the numbers around. So if you notice on the original Unertl rear micrometer mount, the number is actually indexed clockwise. But if you wanted to make adjustments, you would have to, it would be almost like you're doing the numbers backwards. So instead of going like 1, 2, 3, 4 clicks, it'd be like going from 0 or from 1 to 25 to 24, and it'd just be kind of hard to index in your mind. So we rotate the numbers around so that it's counterclockwise turns. Let's see. We also we did take out the new 8-power mount a couple times during our range sessions. So if you want to check out our range review, you can go to the top right.
Oh, and please realize that when you remove this from the mounts, the F plates that press up against the scope tube fall out on occasion.
Mm-hmm. And that is normal. So the F plates are actually what it's the interface between the scope tube and the turrets. And I mean, you can use it without the F plate, but you won't get any clicks, and the turret will be free spinning.
Just to show you guys what we were talking about earlier, the turrets and the adjustments are in fact entirely separate from the scope tube. Well, that's another F plate. Mm-hmm. That happens.
One more last question. So sometimes we get a question from some of our customers saying, "Oh, the scope adjustments are locked up, or the power ring is locked up." And typically this doesn't happen too often on our larger tube scopes, but sometimes on our 1-inch tube scopes, such as the long eye relief scope, it could be that the adjustment was pushed all the way to the limit. And the way to free up the rector unit or free up the adjustments and power ring is we would recommend you to reset the scope to optical center. Well, we'll start again from the top. So another question that we get commonly is how do I reset my scope to optical center? Or more frequently, it's phrased as, "Oh, my power ring or my turrets are locked up. How can I get them to be freed up?" Well, this could be so going back, our modern scopes are internally adjusted, and as you can imagine, there's another tube within a tube. The inner tube is called the erector unit. And so what happens when the turrets or the power ring is locked up commonly is the erector unit's pushed all the way to the edge, where it's physically contacting against the inside of the scope tube. Now, as you can imagine, when you have metal on metal contact, it's gonna lock up. And if you force any clicks, that's when the real damage occurs. But luckily, if you haven't forced any clicks, you haven't done any real damage. You can still easily fix this problem by resetting the scope to optical center. So what is optical center? If you can imagine this scope tube, we want to reset that erector unit to mechanical center in the middle of the scope tube. So the way that we do this is we turn both the turrets all the way clockwise, and then we count back half the amount of clicks counterclockwise. And this should put the scope approximately into optical center. So if you go to our website, to our frequently asked questions page, you'll find a chart with how much internal adjustment each of our modern scopes has. So you refer to that chart and figure out how many clicks to dial in the opposite direction. So for example, if the scope has 60 MOA of adjustment with quarter-minute clicks, first we'll turn everything clockwise, so without forcing any clicks, and then we'll count back 30 MOA or 120 clicks if it's quarter MOA.
Now, just remember, and this is something I learned when changing car tires, you don't want to slam all your change on one, all your change on the other. You want to step it back a little bit at a time, keep it even. That way you actually know you're getting to center and you're not just dragging down whatever wall you might have accidentally hit earlier. In that case, seems to work just fine. And if you're coming by a SHOT Show, where are we going to be?
We're going to be at booth 15444 and 15441. They're next to each other, upstairs. Oh. So those are some of the frequently asked questions that we've kind of commonly seen. Do you have any other questions that we may have not? All right, so let's retry the outro again.
All right, all right.
If there are any other questions that you may have that we haven't addressed, please feel free to comment below. Definitely hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the loop, and give us a like. It really helps us out. Thank you.
And for all of you that have requested videos in the past, we're working on them.
Awesome.
Okay. Yes, many of the scenes that you have not seen because I'm about to cut them out will in fact be found on our next blooper reel.